Hi, welcome to my second lecture on the French defense. The French defense starts e4, e6, d4, d5, and I already covered the exchange variation, which is where white exchanges off these, or it takes the on d5, and then black recaptures. Just to cover the variations that I'm going to cover in my lectures are, so here's the French defense. I just covered the exchange variation, but hopefully in this lecture I'm going to be able to cover these two variations. If not, I'm going to start with the advanced variation, sort of moving backwards up the line. So the advanced variation is basically where white, instead of taking on the third move, d5 is going to advance the pawn. So let's back up. So that means white will play e5, and the reason for this move is that white now gets a space advantage over here on the queen's side, and it avoids the pawn exchange. Gets a space advantage. The drawback is that this move was not a developing move, and you're moving the pawn twice. And the initiative now moves to black. And what the initiative is that's sort of the ability to make threats, or you're sort of in control of the game. If you've ever played a game of chess and one person tends to be moving it and attacking something and the other person has to defend, you sort of know what I'm talking about. That person seems to be in control. That person is said to have the initiative. So black, because it made this pawn move, is now passing the initiative over the black, and black is going to now go along with its plans of attacking, trying to free the bishop, attacking d4, etc., etc. So what does it do? Well, immediately plays d5, attacking this d4 pawn. White defends with c3. Black will play c6, attacking the pawn and threatening to win this d4 pawn again, and then white will play knight to f3. These are the very typical continuations, or the typical moves in the advanced variation. But now we sort of come to a fork on the road where black has two main continuations. The first one being it can move its queen to b6, where it's going to once again threaten to capture the d-pawn, or it can play bishop to e6, and this is known as a waiting move, meaning black is going to see what white's plan is. It's going to develop. It's not going to make a bad move. It's just going to make a move that's going to see what the other guy's plans are. So let's continue with queen to b6. Sorry about that. And now basically white, I want to point out that the queen is attacking, threatening to capture this pawn, but also notice the queen is also eyeing this pawn. So if this bishop moves, like let's say here to defend it, black could just capture this pawn. So now this bishop is somewhat stuck here defending this pawn on b2. So after b6, white is going to play, well, I recommend b2, or bishop to e2. Technically, white could play bishop to d3, and it looks like we would lose this pawn on d4, but we don't. Why? This is a well-known trap. This is why I showed to you. So let's say black decides to say, oh, I can win this pawn. So it captures the pawn, white captures back, and then black takes with a knight, because it looks like white can't take back with a knight because the queen would just capture. Well, this is the problem, is that white takes the knight, the queen takes knight, and then check. And this queen is hanging, not protected. King is in check. Black's going to lose its queen. That's the reason why black cannot win that pawn if the bishop is moved to d3. Excuse me. And I recommend moving your bishop to e2, because I always like having the queen eyeing d4, protecting it. Sort of a personal preference. You could move it to d3. It's perfectly sound, but just a move I've never made. Black's going to exchange off the pawns anyways. And now black is going to move its knight to e7, because with the idea of bringing the knight to here and attacking the d4 pawn. White's going to move its knight to c3. What it's going to do, it's planning to come to a4, where it's going to hit the queen and make it move away. So we're going to basically drive away an attacker of d4. So now black will continue with its plan of attacking d4 again. White will play a4, hitting the queen. The queen's now forced to move away. It's not really a square the queen can move to and still be attacking d4. Plays queen a5, check. Bishop to d2. Bishop to b4. These are the most where I get these moves from, if you don't know, is I look at the games of the Masters, what are their normal continuations, and I check them with my computer. I usually let it run for like 2 minutes per move, just to get an idea of what even what the computer recommends. So what you're seeing is usually the typical continuations of the Masters and sort of what the computer recommends. So somewhat of best play. Not to say these are the moves your opponent's going to make, but when you look at these moves, then you know what moves are probably the best in the given situation. Not to say they're the only playable moves, but sort of what moves are more common among the Masters and somewhat are recommended by the computer. So then bishop to c3, and then black will play b5, hitting the knight. White will play a3, and then bishop takes and knight takes, and that's where all in that line, okay, where the queen comes out. So here, let me back up. This is where we were before, where we had the fork on the road with the queen to b6 and the bishop to e7. So now let's take the bishop to e7 line. So the bishop moves to e7. I still recommend moving the bishop to e2. Queen will come out to b6, hitting the once again attacking the d4 pawn. White will castle. Notice that black actually cannot win cannot still win the d4 pawn. And then in the last example, black moved its knight out to here, to move it to here to attack it. Doesn't have that possibility now, because this is where the bishop is. So now it's going to move bishop to d7, stopping any. Now maybe black can threaten to win this pawn without having that nice little trick of losing the queen. But white will play b3. If you don't know, this will help support the knight, and also gets now this pawn is not under attack from the queen, and this black bishop can now move out. So black will exchange off those pawns. Black will move the rook over to c8 to the open file. That's where rooks like to belong, is to open files. The knight will come to c3. It's planning to go to a4. We'll hit the queen. Black will play a6 just to make sure that the knight is not going to come to b5. Okay, where it's actually a better position than a4, where it can hit these two squares. The knight will come to a4, hitting the queen. The queen now has to retreat it'll go to c7. This is what my first initial place, or well, at least what I thought of when I was analyzing this. This is the most normal continuation, the one the computer recommends. Also possible is moving the queen to a7 and back to d8. a7 just to keep eyeing the d4 square, but then the queen is somewhat out of play. And then a3, white will play a3, just keeping black's knight from moving to here. That's the end of that line. Fortunately, I'm out of time on this video, so I'm going to have to continue my lecture on the